I suppose it's time to do a radio show now. Hello and welcome in. Matt Murphy with you. My goodness, that's very loud. Let me get this in order. It is 12:04 and a hearty good afternoon. Welcome in the Matt Murphy Radio Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Allow us to get the pleasantries out of the way, and we'll get the show lumbering under its own weight. It is Thursday, July 27th, 2023. This is our episode 386 of the Matt Murphy Show. Is that overmodulating for you? All right, I'm just checking. You know, if you don't like the sound coming out of your headphones, just wait a day and you will. It is Thursday, July 20th. Oh, that's better. I don't know what just happened. Thursday, July 27th, and episode 386. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you're invited. 615-737-9986. I might at some point in the proceedings say something that inspires you to offer an opinion of your own. I love turning a monologue into a dialogue. Or, conversely, you can run on over to the super text line, and you can do it there, 615-737-9986. We've got a first opportunity to speak to the 8th District Congressional Representative of Tennessee. That would be David Kustoff, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I've never heard it, but David will be with us at 12:35 today to talk about some of the goings-on in Washington, D.C. What with the Hunter Biden fiasco that was yesterday, we'll discuss that, obviously, amongst other things, to include fentanyl and human smuggling into the United States of America, primarily across the southern border. What to do about that? Do we just have to hold off the Democrats until the 2024 election cycle? All of that is to come, coming up at 12:35 today. And Bill Hagerty, the senator, one of the senators from the great state of Tennessee, will be with us in the 2 o'clock hour. We look forward to having a great conversation with Senator Hagerty about some of the other goings on. I am pleased and proud to announce to you that suddenly the mainstream media wants to talk about age and infirmity amongst our elected officials. I think that's just Jim Dandy. That's just great that we get to have that conversation. Now that 81-year-old Mitch McConnell had an episode yesterday afternoon that we covered for you moments after it happened, as a matter of fact. Mitch McConnell was standing at a podium giving a typical press conference. I'm not going to play the clip because it makes me very uncomfortable. And you can't really hear what's going on the radio. You can perhaps, if you're watching on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, thank you for those of you watching. I appreciate you. Whiteboard up and running. I came up with that this morning in the shower. I was proud of it. It is a pretty poor. Should I be proud of it? It's a pretty poor pun. But I am proud of it, and you can see it for yourself on Super Talk TV. But it doesn't really play well on radio. Mitch McConnell is speaking about something, and he suddenly trails off and just stares blankly straight ahead, doesn't move, doesn't make eye contact with anyone. I heard Congressman Mark Green on Nashville's Morning News this morning. Good to hear the 7th Congressional District Representative on Nashville's Morning News this morning. And Congressman Green, who is also a medical doctor, indicated that he thought he might have a petite seizure. There's a grand mal seizure and a petite, I think I'm saying this right, petite mal seizure. I know a little about these things because my mother would have grand mal seizures from time to time due to her brain surgery, and took phenobarbital and Tegretol in order to prevent them. But he mentioned that might have been what was going on with Mitch McConnell. Well, for those of us who have been studying and studying and studying the medical condition and how seemingly the president of the United States is slowly sliding into a dementia-addled state. And I don't say that with any pleasure. I say it as an observation. A casual observer without a medical degree can look at Joe Biden from 4 years ago, look at Joe Biden today, and recognize that there has been significant cognitive decline. Yet the media doesn't mention it except to say that the Republicans are attacking the Democrats. Republicans continue their attack against Joe Biden today, they say. Notice that when something comes up in the news that the mainstream media doesn't care for, they always couch it in those terms. For example, another unrelated example, but an easy one, yesterday. The mainstream media ought not to have a dog in this fight. The mainstream media should be there to report the facts of what's going on in the world. The fourth estate, the press generally exists, and the protections that the press enjoys exists to make sure that the people, the citizens of the United States of America, have the opportunity to learn what's going on in their government or in their world or in their neighborhoods without interference from elected officials who would like to coax the news into a narrative of their own choosing. You understand? That's the entire concept of a free and open press. Otherwise, the state attempts to manipulate the press. We've seen this historically. The state will manipulate the press to reporting only that which they desire them report, or they report, for their own agenda, and to maintain and control power over the people. It is the reason that the freedoms of the press, along with our freedom of speech and of religion and of the ability of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, it's the reason why these things were set down in the First Amendment. And it's the reason why it's the First Amendment. These are the foundational building blocks of a free and open society. But sadly, many in the mainstream media have abdicated their responsibility to partisan politics. And so it is that they report endlessly on Donald Trump and his, quote, legal troubles, and refuse to report on Joe Biden's legal problems. And Joe Biden has legal problems. And yesterday was a part of Joe Biden's legal problems. Now, I promise all of this circles back to age in just a second. So yesterday, for me, was about Joe Biden, not about Hunter Biden. Now, while Hunter Biden matters in the sense that I care about a one-tier justice system as opposed to a two-tier justice system, and the only reason Hunter Biden has gotten the sweetheart deal that he got was because he was the son of a former vice president, a former senator, and a current president of the United States of America. No one else in America would get this deal. And apparently they attempted to bite off a little more of the apple than they could chew, and the judge pushed back on it. So the facts of the case are simple. Let me give you the facts of the case before I tell you how the media reported on it. The facts of the case are these. The prosecution, a compliant Merrick Garland-run prosecution. David Weiss does not run that prosecution. Merrick Garland does. And several have already testified to this fact before Congress, and more are coming, to include potentially Weiss himself. So a DOJ-run prosecution gets together with the defense and creates this plea deal by which they lower the standard of the charge, the gun charge, from a felony to a misdemeanor, and they give him diversion, a court-run diversionary program, so he doesn't have to serve any time on that, and that'll be expunged. And then on the tax charges, he paid off his taxes because his rich fat cat donor that buys some of his artwork already paid off some of those charges, whatever, and he's going to escape jail time. But they had to make sure to give him immunity against future prosecution. Why was immunity against future prosecution so important? It wasn't important to Hunter, it's important to Joe. Because the way you get to Joe is through Hunter. The way you get to Joe is through Hunter's laptop. The way you get to Joe is through Hunter's associations. Hunter Biden is a crackhead, and so he's loosey-goosey with the information Joe Biden has been buttoned down on for the last 40 years. You see, Joe Biden knew how to grease the palms of the right people in order to enrich himself and enrich his family, and but for his crackhead son, he would have gotten away with it. So you've got to shut that sieve. It's like a sieve. It's just information is just filtering out of this laptop. So you got to shut that laptop somehow. And the way you do it is to give Hunter Biden immunity against any future prosecution. But here's the rub. They can't call the case against Hunter Biden closed. Otherwise, the House of Representatives, the Oversight Committee, is everyone following me right now? Am I making sense? If you call the case against Hunter Biden closed, then the Oversight Committee is immediately going to demand all the information that the Department of Justice has on it. So it's no longer a criminal case, it becomes a political one. And politically, at that point, one would assume if what is we believe to be true is true, if what the evidence indicates is true, then you've got Joe. So they can't call the case against Hunter closed, but you can't guarantee future immunity if it's still open. And that was the rub for the judge. You're trying to have it both ways. You're trying to suggest that this information against Hunter Biden is all closed, and you've got nowhere else to go with this case, but at the same time, you tell me that it's still open, so the House of Representatives has no access to the case. So how in the world can I grant you immunity on a case that's still open? And that was the question the judge asked. Has this ever happened before, the judge said? The prosecution said no. Are you granting Hunter Biden immunity for all potential future crimes that you uncover in the open investigation? The prosecution had to say no. And that's where everything fell apart. I hope that makes sense. It's as simple as that. The prosecution wanted to end this too because they are working for Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice. But they couldn't have it both ways. Otherwise, the House of Representatives gets their paws on all of this information, Republicans primarily in the House. And so they were stymied. That's big news. Do you know how the mainstream media reported on it? That mean, evil Republicans will pounce on what is a procedural issue regarding Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden alone. Some within the mainstream media, and these are sycophants, right? We know that they don't really report the news. I'm talking #NeverCNN and MSNBC and some of the other organizations. I would think more of a few of these organizations. Or I'd like to think more of a few of these organizations, but I have a hard time doing it. They would tell you that they repeated over and over again. ABC did it. MSNBC did it. #NeverCNN did it. I assume NBC did it because they take their cues from MSNBC. There's no evidence that Joe Biden had anything whatsoever to do with any of this whatsoever, they said. It is empirically untrue that is the case. It's simply a lie. A lie being something that you say that you know or write that you know not to be true at the time that you say it or write it. As the anchors, maybe the anchors are stupid enough they don't get it, but certainly the people that write this garbage, they know that it's not true. They understand that we have a wealth of testimony against Joe Biden. They understand that we have a growing mound of evidence against Joe Biden. They understand that there are whistleblowers that will testify against Joe Biden. They understand that there's a money trail that leads to Joe Biden. They are desperate to keep this case about Hunter Biden. Oh, it's just a father trying to protect his drug-addicted son. Bravo, Sierra. Joe Biden is attempting to protect, well, he's trying to protect an ass. His own.
Give me a break.
I will not give you a break, sir. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to report the news. So this is an easy example of how the mainstream media has decided to tilt the scales against one political ideology and toward another. The mainstream media has decided that it is in their best interest, and maybe they're just ideologically driven this way, that they're for socialism. And they're going to drive us all the way to socialism. And as long as they do what they're told, as long as they're good little talking heads, and they speak as they are spoken to, and they say what they are told to say, They'll make buku bucks. They'll become a part of the bourgeoisie. You and I will be down here with the plebes, and we'll be told when to shut up and when to speak up, and we will not be told to speak up very often. So yesterday I found it interesting, in the midst of mainstream media covering for Joe by saying, well, he's just a father trying to support his crackhead son. This has nothing to do with Joe Biden, nothing at all. Suddenly, they were interested in ageism. When Mitch McConnell, 81 years of age, had his senior moment, which might have been more serious from a medical perspective. Now, later on, Mitch McConnell came back out, and he kind of laughed it off, said that he spoke with the president and told him he got sandbagged. Ha, ha, ha. And then someone asked him a question. And I'm telling you, folks, Mitch McConnell needs to go. Yesterday, it wasn't so much the moment, it was after the moment. When he came back, not when he came back at the press conference, but later on, he comes out of his office. There are several reporters outside of his office. They engage him. The audio's a little muddy, so I won't play it for you. But they engage him, and they say, how are you? Are you okay? Did a doctor check you out? He said, I'm fine. I talked to the president and told him I got sandbagged. Ha, ha, ha. And someone said, well, did you get a doctor to check you out? I'm fine. Well, and there was a follow-up question along the lines of, is everything okay? Do you feel dehydrated? What happened with you? I told the president I got sandbagged, as if someone had told him to say that line before he came out of the office, and that's the only thing he knew to say, and so he just repeated it. I want to know from you, especially those of you who are a little older, past the summer season of your life on earth. I believe that most politicians shy away from a hard cap on age with regard to public service because they think it's going to tick off older people. And I don't believe that for a moment. I don't think we want grandpa driving an 18-wheeler at 85 years of age, or for some grandpas, any automobile. And I could be talked out of a hard cap and talked into some form of cognitive test, although I don't know that I trust the cognitive test because it's all about who administers it. But right now, I am all in on an 80-year-old hard cap, and I could be talked into a 75-year-old hard cap. Now, what do I mean by that? If you are going to be 80 years old at the time of the next election, you are ineligible to run for office, any office. Congress, Senate, President, dog catcher, city council, Board of Education, whatever. No offense to those of you in the winter season of your public service, but we are seeing too much of this. There's way too much money involved in incumbency for us to allow this to continue to go on because, sadly, the voters get snowed in, and it knows no political stripe. I got McConnell. I got Biden. Hell, I'm sorry for you, Chuck Grassley, but in my estimation, it's time for you to pass the baton to someone else. And then Dianne Feinstein. Audio coming up on Feinstein. It's sad. It's 12:23, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Your thoughts on this, 615-737-9986. We talked a little about it yesterday. I want to talk more about it today. Should there be a hard cap on public service? We'll get into it in a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Friends, I am down 22.5 pounds. Thank you to PhD Weight Loss. They're helping me, and they can help you, and I'm so proud to talk about them. PhD Weight Loss is a doctor and dietitian developed, individually delivered weight loss system that works, and I'm evidence that it works. The average guy loses between 3 and 5 pounds per week. The average female between 2 and 3 pounds per week. There's a couple of things. One, it's structure, and I absolutely love it. I need a little of that in my life. I need instruction about what to consume and what not to consume, which foods to avoid and which foods to go with, and all of that is individually tailored to your body. Secondarily, the counseling. I talked with Rachel today, as a matter of fact. She's my counselor at PhD Weight Loss. We have great conversations. She walks through the week that was, and she talks about the week that's coming up, and it's all designed to help support you in your weight loss journey. Now, speaking of your weight loss journey, how about this for support? If you don't get within 5 pounds of your target weight by the end of your program, and they set up a schedule for you to lose the weight that you're looking to lose because they know how much weight you can lose on a weekly basis. If you don't get to that weight loss goal, PhD will continue to coach you for free until you do. That is the PhD guarantee. Go to myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com and tell them Matt Murphy sent you to PhD Weight Loss. Hey, friends, I have a special message from the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Do you suffer specifically from knee pain? Is it painful to walk or perform your day-to-day activities? If so, I've got great news from the Dr. Gill Center. They can relieve your knee pain fast and easily with no downtime and no surgery. They're offering new and effective non-surgical treatments for knee pain, even if it's arthritis or an old injury. What is living with knee pain costing you? I mean, obviously it's costing you a lot of pain, but is it costing you money or time and energy? Call the Dr. Gill Center today to see if you qualify for a $39 consultation and get back to a pain-free life. Call 615-882-4838. That's 615-882-4838. Now, obviously, if you suffer from any other type of pain in your body, you need to call the Dr. Gill Center. But specifically for those of you who suffer from knee pain, there is an alleviation of that pain available for you. 615-882-4838 or callmepainfree.com. Call today. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. And so we are told that today, or this month, I guess, is the hottest that it's ever been on planet Earth. If you don't believe that the mainstream media works in lockstep with one another, I'm not suggesting that there are memos going around telling them what to talk about and what not to talk about, but it's as if there are. It is on the top of the fold, above the fold, as we used to say in the newspaper industry. It is the headline banner on every website, hottest it's ever been. To which I say, if this is the hottest it's ever been, it's not so bad. I mean, I would have thought it would have been worse, you know? Plus, if you're really, 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 really hot and you can get to the second floor of our building on Music Row, we can cool you off.
I saw an article online the other day about how 400,000 years ago, global warming got rid of, I think it was 70% of the ice cap in Greenland.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly man-made.
Yeah,
clearly,
obviously.
400,000 years ago.
By the way, I failed to say hello to you earlier. I was worried about other things.
Well, happy Friday Eve to you too, sir.
Don't do it. What are you doing? You know, it's not funny. It's not funny. It doesn't put me in a good humor. It just annoys the crap out of me. Just keep that crap on the morning show, would you?
I don't work on the morning show.
Well, I mean, call in.
I'm not getting up that early.
Super text it. I pick on Nashville's morning news because they talk about Friday Eve all the time. And Friday Eve is one of my non-preferred phrases or words, along with, I mean, there's a lot of them, you know, kiddos, puppers, any sort of nickname for coffee. And then Friday Eve. I mean, Friday Eve, also known as Thursday, which is a perfectly serviceable word. Talking age caps. Dennis, you'll be first in Nashville. What do you think, Dennis?
Hi, Matt. Love the show, by the way.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I'm a 72-year-old. I guess I'm in the winter stages. Like to think I'm in the late fall stages. Pretty good shape. Still think clearly. But I couldn't agree with you more. Age limits are absolutely extremely necessary. We've got a lot of people in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere that have just overstayed their welcome, so to speak, in my opinion.
Well, and the power, and great call, Dennis, and very succinctly stated. I like pithy. Thank you for that. I've got to run to a break, but I will get to the Dianne Feinstein comment in just a moment. It will frighten you. Obviously, she has no idea where she is, much less what day it is. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. While we might snare some individuals that are capable and are of sound mind and body, sadly, the incumbency and the power of the incumbency is allowing people who are not of a mental capacity to serve. Well, Matt, that's what democracy is all about. Well, we put lower age restrictions on service. Why can't we put upper age restrictions on service? We'll continue talking about it. It is 12:32 on Super Talk. I love training at the Glock store. I love the retail space. I love the accessories and the various clothing items that they have. They have a lot of concealed carry clothing items. I mentioned the concealed carry underwear, and people think I'm kidding, and I'm not. They have concealed carry underwear. I'm going to get me some of those at some point. There's also a vest that I've got my eyeball on the retail side of things. Let's talk about the Shoot 270 ranges, however. They do not have shooting lanes at the Glock store. They have shooting ranges. They have rooms for you to shoot in. And you can get a trainer inside of that room and get him to train, or her to train you up. And you can do it in groups. I mean, you can have 2 or 3 or 4 people there. And basically, for the cost of a few range sessions, you can train every day for a year with an instructor. The Glock Store 270 memberships are the best shooting deals in Nashville. You include individual shooting rooms with just you and your trainer. I mentioned up to 4 individuals per trainer, highly experienced and certified firearm instructors, and good people. We spoke to Dan Hughes last week about this, how they train to your need and to your current abilities. In other words, if you're an experienced marksman, they can get you to the next level. If you've never handled a gun, they can start there as well. It all starts with a visit to the Glock store, either online, glockstore.com, or shoot270.com, or on the road just off of Elm Hill Pike in Nashville. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the world-famous Glock store.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. And one of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you until 3 o'clock. The Drive with Brian Wilson at that time. Appreciate you being with us, whatever time you're able to give us. 5 minutes of the full 3 hours. We thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a hot one outside. Although, you know, it's July 27th. It's supposed to be a hot one in Middle Tennessee. And the major media networks would like for you to know that it's as hot as it's ever been. Right now, this month. Hot as it's ever been. And I actually heard someone say that it's as hot as it's been in 120,000 years, to which I thought, how do they know? I mean, they don't. Now, they can give some vague estimates as to conditions on Earth when ice ages came through and when those ice ages were broken up by hotter conditions, which has been happening since the beginning of time. It's really a fascinating study in changing language to the point that it suits you. Because originally we spoke about global warming. And global warming did not do what Al Gore, right here from the state of Tennessee, I told you that the global warming would go up like a hockey stick. And it didn't.
I'm trying to warn everybody, and nobody takes me serious.
Well, I'm trying to tell you that we've passed the point of no return. Well, if we've passed the point of no return, then we can't go back. But they continue to want to freak you out. For the last, 10, 15 years, and Al Gore was he was the town crier on this for a while, but he didn't start the fire. He tried to make us believe that we were reaching a breaking point in these events to which we could not return. Well, we've passed that breaking point. So
You know what fascinates me about all this is going back into the early 60s. If let's just say climate change is 100% real. Let's just take that as an assumption.
Yep.
People will not buy into it wholeheartedly because going back to the 60s, the Democrats and liberals will glom on to any climate, any environmental, any earthbound impact that was happening and claim it was the end of the world. There's going to be famines. There's going to be a little ice age. We're going to run out of gas. Acid rain's going to destroy. Every single time it was an 11.
And now they've cried wolf far too much.
To the point where nobody wants to hear the crap anymore.
But here's the thing. You say, let's pretend that, well, climate change is real. That's the brilliance of the verbiage. The only thing the climate doesn't stop doing is changing. The climate will never remain static. Hence the whiteboard. The climate will never remain the same. Whether man is here, whether man is not here, whether man has some mild impact on the outcome. And I'm not one of these guys that would tell you that we have zero ability to affect outcomes. We do and potentially can affect certain aspects of climate over time. My suggestion to you is we are not having the impact that the political left would want you to believe, and they are not doing this because of any said impact. They're doing this for power and control. And so for a while, they talked about, as Bell K mentioned, global cooling. Back in the 60s and 70s. Oh, it's the coming ice age. We're going to have an ice age before you know it, and all mankind will freeze to death. That never materialized. They went on to things like acid rain and other aspects of the climate. Oh, no, look at what we're doing to the climate. Remember the ozone layer? Remember the hole in the ozone layer that was freaking everybody out when I was a kid? It never came to it. We haven't stopped using carbon. It's not like we've stopped using fossil fuels. We use more fossil fuels than ever before. What happened to the ozone layer? How did the hole in the ozone layer repair itself? Did we do that? It's a pretty fantastic setup. And they finally figured out the language to use. So they claim that we, mankind, are responsible fully for what we are not responsible for. And for a while, they went global cooling because that seemed the trend, and that didn't work out for them. And then for a while, they went global warming, and that started petering out. You know, there was a time there in about 20 years ago, 2001, or well, I guess it started about 98, 99, 2000, 2001, where the temperatures were going up every year. And then we had the hurricanes of 2005 to include, obviously, Katrina. Rita followed up Katrina, and Al Gore took the opportunity to create an inconvenient truth, which was not truth whatsoever. It was a lie about the totality of man's responsibility for the growing trend of global warming and how we could put a stop to it, and the whole hockey stick analogy, and the fact that if we don't stop this by 2015, all mankind as we know it will cease to exist in the future years because it will be too late. That's what Al Gore told us in 2005. Well, an unfortunate, inconvenient thing happened along the way of his inconvenient truth. And that was the earth kind of stopped warming, despite the fact that they proclaimed if mankind continued to use fossil fuels along the levels that they were using them, that it would never stop warming. And it did. So they had to change their verbiage. And they got wise this time. They had tried global cooling, and that let them down. Then they tried global warming, and that too let them down. And I don't know who came up with it, but whoever came up with it deserves a Cupid doll. They said, what about climate change? That way, anything that happens with the climate, any abnormality, if we have a particularly cold spell, or a particularly warm spell, or a particularly wet spell, or a particularly dry spell, or if we have droughts over here but rain over here, or we've got snow over here and hail over here, whatever the climate does, we can blame man and attempt to, in the process, seize money, power, and control over mankind. It's pretty brilliant. because they know that climate doesn't stop changing. And now they've already started doing it. If it gets hot, it's climate change. If it gets colder, it's climate change. If you tell them that these are seasonal activities, they say that you're a naysayer, you're a heretic, you're a denier. They'll simultaneously tell you that individual weather events do not indicate climate change and tell you that individual weather events indicate climate change, depending on whether it suits them or not. If it's when it was a cold winter last winter, they said, well, these individual events don't necessarily indicate, but this is the new one, right? Well, it's the wild fluctuations that you have to watch. These are wildly fluctuating weather conditions. What are you talking about, like winter?
These are the same idiots that told you that they were going to win a war on poverty and they were going to win a war on drugs, and now they're going to win the war on the climate if they just tax you more.
Because it costs money. Wars cost money, Bell. The war on poverty costs money. It hasn't solved poverty and never will. The war on drugs costs money. It's actually made the drug issues worse, not better. And obviously, the war on the climate change is going to cost us cash. We've got to tax people to oblivion. And oh, by the way, the rules are for thee and not for me. I get to run around in my Gulfstream jet because I'm paying carbon credits. Carbon credits. What did I see recently? I think it was a South Park episode. Maybe it was something different where a group of people wanted to plant trees. No, it was King of the Hill, I think. It was King of the Hill. They were buying the propane people, propane and propane accessories. The propane people wanted to buy carbon credits to offset what the propane was doing for the environment. And in doing so, they were planting trees. Well, nobody ever planted any trees. So instead of worrying with planting the trees, they just went and leased a guy's property. It was like just 100 acres of property with trees on it and said, hey, can we pay you not to do anything to your trees? And he's like, I'm not going to do anything to my trees. I like my trees. I'm leaving my property alone. Okay, well, we'll pay you once a month. Like $10,000 a month. What do you want me to do? Nothing. That's what carbon credits are, by the way. You're paying so as to continue to do whatever in your life you want to continue to do to prevent people from calling you a hypocrite for demanding that you stop doing the very thing they're doing, like flying around the world, as an example. It's a brilliant strategy, all designed to break into the free market system, to damage free markets, and to take over said free markets through government power and control. And they announced years ago that this was the game plan. So while it is hot this summer, let your heart not be troubled. Fall is right around the corner. And after that, believe it or not, winter. 615-737-9986 is the telephone number if you have any thoughts on that. We also talked about age restrictions and a hard cap. Here's one of the inspirations that I had for this concept and this talking point today. This was earlier in the week. 90-year-old Dianne Feinstein has to be told just to say I. Now, I believe this was during a Judiciary Committee hearing in which they were pushing an appointment. Listen to the exchange.
Senator Feinstein.
I guess I should set it up a little better. They're taking votes. So everyone's sitting there, and she wasn't the first to be called on. They're taking votes. So they, Senator Bell, Senator Murphy. Bell says, aye. Murphy, nay, nay, nay. And then they get to Senator Feinstein.
Senator Feinstein.
Say aye.
So the woman says, just say I. She's already leaned to her and said, just say I.
Say I. Pardon me? I.
Yeah.
Just say
I would like to support a yes vote on this. It provides $823 billion. That's an increase of $26 billion for the Department of Defense. And it funds priorities submitted.
As she's talking, you get a close-up view of her, and her handler is whispering into her ear. You can hear him whispering and mumbling. Eventually, you will hear another handler say even more loudly, just say I. And finally, she gets it. And
She's submitted.
yeah. Just say I.
Okay, just
Great.
aye.
Thank you.
Senator Fine.
I mean, it would be tempting to go after the Democrats on this, but I don't think it's just a Democrat issue. Although the Democrats have shown, I don't know. I don't think this knows a political boundary, as a matter of fact. I remember when I was a youngster thinking that Strom Thurmond was way too old to do anything, much less be a senator in the United States, Senate. And now you have Feinstein and Chuck Grassley is more mentally capable than most, but he's lost 8 or 10 steps. And on it goes. Why would we not, if we have minimum age restrictions, have a maximum age restriction? Would that not make sense? That seems consistent with the vision of the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers, they had faith, more faith than perhaps they should, that individuals that went to Washington, D.C. to commit to public service were doing just that, committing to public service. And there would be a time when the winter of their public service would become apparent and they would willingly go back home and allow others to serve. Well, Washington, D.C. has become a honeypot now of power and control and money. And these elderly individuals are being influenced by people around them who demand jobs. I don't know that Dianne Feinstein continues to want to serve. I don't think she has the mental ability to make that decision. The people around her want their power and control, and they know they're not going to have it anymore if somebody else steps up to the plate. So it's not even the elected official making the decisions about this. It's the power behind the crown. And the only way we can stop it is to demand a maximum age of service. And I think it's reasonable to say 80, although I'd probably want to put it at 75, meaning if the election is to be held on or after your 75th birthday, you are not eligible to run. Now, a lot of you are telling me that you prefer term limits. I think you lose a lot of good people with term limits. I'm not against good servants standing in the well of the Senate or the House of Representatives for a good number of years. And I've heard the argument about we can talk about term limits in a moment, because I do think we have the power of term limits, and that's the power of the voting. 615-737-9986 as we continue. It's the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk. There are 2 locations to serve you with Tennessee Men's Clinic, and here's what they developed some years ago, several decades ago. Evan and the gang at Tennessee Men's Clinic understood that there weren't really many clinics, if any clinics out there, dedicated solely to men's health. And they understand how men are. I know how men are, right? We don't check our numbers. We don't know what cholesterol means to us. We don't know we have any idea what our blood pressure is or what our T levels are, for that matter. Well, at Tennessee Men's Clinic, they're going to get to the bottom of all of those things. They're going to find out what your numbers are and how it might be affecting your energy levels and various activities that you might want to get into. over your middle-aged years, or maybe into that winter season that we've been talking about. I'm talking about getting to the gym or doing work outside or even bedroom activity. All of these things can be affected by changing levels in your body. Let's get that checked and let's get it fixed. Tennessee Men's Clinic can do just that. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com or 615-208-9090, 208-9090 for our friends at Tennessee Men's Clinic.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. One of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or call 615-851-1950.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Attorneys representing former President Trump met for an hour today with special counsel Jack Smith's team. It could signal the investigation into Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election is wrapping up. Trump posting on social media after that meeting, calling the attorney meeting, quote, productive. ABC's Catherine Folder says a grand jury is hearing evidence in the case and has reconvened.
We know that this January 6th grand jury is in, we believe, and they have to be in to return any form of indictment. Now, we don't know when that will come or if that will come today, but there is definitely heightened activity here in this courthouse.
With nearly a month of temperatures above 110 degrees in Phoenix and half of the country under heat alerts, President Biden announcing a plan to help alert Americans of the growing risks of extreme heat. ABC's Ike Ejiochi has more.
President Biden said that he wants to make sure that all facets of the economy are protecting workers, and this goes out to be that first step to ensure this. This essentially reaffirms that workers have heat-related protections under federal law. It also reminds employers of their own responsibilities to make sure that workers are protected during times of extreme heat.
Temperatures also rising around the globe. In Greece, new wildfires are threatening homes in the city of Volos, those flames setting off explosions at an ammunition warehouse. Ukraine shifting into a new phase in its counteroffensive against Russia, admitting that the gains in the southeast have come at a cost of serious losses. ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy.
It looks like they're trying to ultimately get to the coast in which they could then block the essentially ground supply lines that gets to Crimea. And if they can sever that, then they could make Russia's hold of Crimea even challenged.
Russia's president, in remarks at the African summit, says Russia suffered huge losses too. You're listening to ABC News.
I encourage you to listen all day, every day to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. But when you're listening to podcast, I have a suggestion for you, and that's the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. The Tennessean has dubbed Steve Abramowitz in his podcast a conservative advocacy podcast, and that's a good thing. I don't know if the Tennessean thought it was a good thing, but I certainly do. He always has an interesting guest or two. They have the ever-popular Steve and Steve segment. They've got quotes of the day that you can live by, and it's not just politics, although they center around politics quite a bit. You've heard Steve on our show. Steve also talks entertainment, culture. He talks to authors. He talks the arts. Found on Deezer, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast apps. If you can't get enough of Mill Creek View, Tennessee, check out their news publication. That would be mcview.us. That's mcview.us. It's Mill Creek View and their Tennessee podcast. Available on all of your podcast pages. Go to Mill Creek View and tell them Matt Murphy sent you. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show in progress. It's 1:05. Thank you for being with us, whatever time you're able to give. We're appreciative of it. We have Senator Bill Hagerty coming up this hour, and I was mistaken. I originally said David Kustoff, Congressman David Kustoff in the first hour of the show. I was mistaken. It's the third hour of the show, and that's on me. Your telephone calls in the meantime, talking age caps on public service, particularly in Washington, D.C. We had Mitch McConnell yesterday, acting in the manner that he did, looking like he was having some form of medical episode. You've got Dianne Feinstein acting as she does on a regular basis, not knowing that there was a roll call going on. And, I mean, literally, she was handed a piece of paper, just started reading the piece of paper. I think I mistakenly said it was a vote. It was just a roll call. Thank you, Tim, for that catch. I apologize. They're just asking you if you're here. Just say aye. And she wouldn't. She started reading the paper, had no idea what was going on. And this begs the question, especially considering our commander-in-chief and how he doesn't seem to know what day it is, much less what he's doing or what he's saying. All of this leads us to wonder if you would be supportive of age restrictions in public service. I certainly am. I would be willing to talk about term limits. I'm less concerned with term limits because I'm more concerned with getting the populace engaged to the point that the power of the incumbency does not have the sway that it currently has in Washington, D.C. Sadly, a lot of people don't pay quite as much attention as perhaps they should. Myra is next up in Nashville on the concept of age caps. Hey, Myra, glad you called.
Good afternoon. I hope this call finds you well. I'm curious about what you would do with judicial appointments that are becoming senior, very seniors. How would you administer a mental acuity test?
I mean, yeah, you would either do it one of two ways. Either they would be included in the age cap restrictions, or you would include some sort of cognition examination. The trick in that would be, I think if you did that with judicial nominees, you would have to do it with elected officials as well. I mean, it's a great question. But I think the trick there is finding a nonpartisan objective third party to administer the test.
Good luck in Washington.
Well, that's well spoken, Myra. I agree. I agree that it would be difficult to find someone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. I appreciate you. That's a good thought. I had not thought of the concept of the judicial branch of government being affected by this. My main concern was we're seeing way too many octogenarians elected into public service, and they don't seem to know where they are. And maybe this has always been the case, and we're just noticing it more because of the 24-hour media cycle. I think that has something to do with it. I would suggest that there have always been old people serving, and the power of the incumbency has always held sway to some degree. We simply notice it quite a bit more now. 7434 asks, how old is Nancy Pelosi? I don't know. I'm going to guess. Bell will fact check me. I'm guessing 82.
Well, are we talking about birthdays or carbon dating?
Both, a little of both. I'm gonna go 82 on Nancy Pelosi. Now Nancy Pelosi is a nut.
83.
All right, 83. There you have it. So Nancy Pelosi would be out in that case. Tammy just sent in a screenshot of our Super Talk television title for the day. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Bell K has fun with the title of those programs, which I would assume would draw people in, depending on the title. And today's title is apparently Matt Murphy awaiting his arraignment on tax and gun, and that's all I got. I don't know what the rest of it is.
Gun charges.
Oh, well, sure. I am, actually. There's no pending matter. I'm just I think it's just a matter of time. Sandra says, Matt, there's no such thing as neutral in politics, and I would agree with that as well. And there is the rub. 8064, I think it should be a 20-year limit or 65 years of age, whichever comes first. 65? I don't know that, I don't know that that's even too young. I mean, I think that might be just a little too young for me.
Hey, the whole thing actually reads, Matt Murphy awaiting his arraignment on tax and gun charges and on the air. Wait, that's Hunter Biden. Libertarian lunchtime, noon to 3 with Matt Murpheeeee.
Oh, you rhymed it there.
Yes.
I see what you did there. Thank you much for that. Ken is next up, wants to talk age caps. Hey, Ken, how are you?
I'm doing fine, and thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, let me point something out. I'm 89 years old. I've just driven to Gulf Shores and back. I'm employed, gainfully employed by a structural engineer and a cardiologist. I'm very well informed about politics. In fact, I worked with lobbyists for a number of years, and I don't have a problem at all. I play pickleball and tennis. I work out every day, and I don't know why anyone would restrict me from doing anything, quite frankly.
Well, I don't know that I would restrict you from doing any of those activities that you just described. My point is that you said you were 89, Ken?
Yeah, 89.
Wow, man, oh man. I mean, congratulations. You have.
Well, don't congratulate me. I don't need that, but thank you.
Well, I mean, if you're still playing tennis and pickleball, if you're driving to Gulf Shores at the age of 89, and you still have the cognitive and physical ability to do that, you're the exception, right?
Well, there are exceptions. That was my point. I mean, don't lose someone out because of their age or for any other reason. There's ways to test people. And by the way, I take no medication.
Well, would you agree then, Ken? Well, let me ask it a different way.
Sure.
Would you agree with me that there are people prior to their 35th birthday that are smart enough to serve as president of the United States?
Absolutely.
Why do we have an age restriction on them?
Because some people think that they're not exceptions to the rule, and so they judge them by the norm. If you're going to judge someone by the norm, then you're going to miss out on some pretty good talent. I have an associate, 31 years old. He's well informed. He knows quite a bit about the geopolitical situation, especially the economy and about fiat currencies and a lot of other things. And I would vote for him for any office he ran for. I mean, the guy is extremely knowledgeable.
Well,
but that's just an exception.
I'll give you another example as we're talking here, and this is just kind of the point that I'm trying to make, and I understand yours certainly that there are exceptions that demonstrate.
I understand yours. I think you're right. I think that Joe Biden's way too old to do anything. I think
he's much
he's
younger.
Totally incompetent.
But he's younger. He's younger than you.
I mean, well, I know that. I understand that. But he was probably in bad shape 5 years ago. I mean, no longer. I think he has dementia.
I would argue it's the same reason that we don't make exceptions for young people under the age of 16 driving on our roads. While there are many examples of 14-year-old youngsters that are mature enough to handle a motor vehicle on our roadways, because those are the exception as opposed to the rule, we're not going to make an official exception for them. They have to wait like everyone else until they reach an age of maturity. And honestly, all of that is kind of in the eye of the beholder anyway. So I think
I agree with that. That's a good point.
You have to create those standards. And sometimes someone like yourself, Ken, I promise you this, I would take you over Joe Biden in a nanosecond right now, just from this conversation.
Well, thank you very much. That's a compliment.
Well, I mean, it's true.
I don't know how you are, but I would take you over most of the people that serve in Congress right now.
Well, I'm.
In fact, I think we're watching the theater. I think we have one party with two names. Quite frankly, my experience with lobbyists back in the '90s sort of points that out. But that's another story.
Well, Ken, I'm glad you called. Please make it a habit. I would enjoy hearing from you, and I am not. I'm a little more than half your age. About 9 years more than half your age. No. About 4 years more than half your age. My goodness, Joe Biden's rubbing off on me. I can't do math anymore. 1:15 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Consistent with my belief that we will be called by Senator Bill Hagerty in the coming moments, I'm going to call an audible. We're going to go to break a little early. And when we come back, I expect that we'll have Senator Bill Hagerty on with us on The Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Efficient Heating and Cooling, your one-stop shop for all things heating and cooling. And cooling is probably on your mind more than anything with the hot conditions. Now, I warned you, and Jeff Eddy has warned me as well, that when the hot conditions come, a unit that's already having trouble might have additional trouble and might go out altogether. And if that's the case, never you fear. Jeff Eddy and his team at Efficient Heating and Cooling, they keep their invoices small. They never charge you overtime rates on the weekends or the evenings because they know that your AC doesn't know what time it is. They also know that a unit that has some age on it has a tendency to go out this time of year, and they do everything in their power to get to you as quickly as possible because they know that this type of heat can be a killer. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric. They're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. They're good people. They offer free financing. They're quality folks. They're never going to tell you what isn't so with regard to your unit. I trust them in my home, and I know that you can trust them in yours. Go to efficienthvac.net, efficienthvac.net, or call 615-784-4424, 784-4424 for my friend Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling. I always do this when I use the phrase because a lot of you run over to the super text line and say, Murphy, you mean age of maturity, not age of majority. No, I do not. I mean age of majority. Look it up and we'll learn something together. Maturity knows no age limit. You know, some people reach the age of maturity at a different time in their lives and in terms of their birth cycle, but The age of majority is set by statute oftentimes. It's 1:19 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, talking about a lot of issues involving Washington, D.C. We will continue to do so. It's always an honor to be joined by Senator Bill Hagerty on the Murphy Show hotline as he talks to us about the goings-on in D.C. Senator, good afternoon. Thank you for being on with us.
Matt, it's always great to be with you. Thank you.
I do appreciate you tackling and diving deep into the issues that might not be on the surface or on the radar of the average Tennessean. And one of those issues that you are consistently on the cutting edge of some of these points to be made in the halls of the Senate would be China. And I noted that you took yet another step to attempt to expose China as the number one geopolitical foe that we face in the United States of America. Just yesterday, I believe it was, a bipartisan bill. Tell me about it.
Well, look, China has been doing everything it possibly can to advance itself at our expense. If you look back, and this is an interesting experience, I was sitting with President Trump when we were negotiating the trade deal with China and with Japan. This is back when I was serving as U.S. ambassador to Japan, and the slides were both in front of us. One had a chart of the expenditures of the CCP on their military, the PLA expenditures, and the dramatic ramp up since 2001, since they joined the WTO, the dramatic ramp up in their military expenditures. President Trump said, look at this. He overlaid our trade deficit, the chart that had our trade deficit, over that military spending chart. It almost exactly matched. He looked at me and he said, we're paying for this. The deficit that we're running with China is paying for this. What is also paying for it is that China has been stealing our intellectual property right, left, and center. If you want to do business in China, you've got to transfer your technology to them. They don't play by the same set of rules in any way. And I think the most nefarious is when they actually violate our sovereignty. I mean, we've seen what's happened with the spy balloon floating over the country, with them working with Cuba to put in place a deeper spy operation there. It's just unbelievable to try to put in police stations here in the United States to suppress their own people. And then most recently hacking the email accounts of cabinet members here in the United States of America. But the Biden administration's response to this is, well, we want to go over and get some photo ops. We want to start negotiating with China, begging them to stop sending fentanyl here. I mean, China's talking about using, by prohibiting their effort to prohibit fentanyl precursors from coming to the United States as a bargaining point with us. We're going to have to ask for that. We're going to have to bargain with them to get them to stop sending fentanyl. They want to be able to start or be able to maintain their police stations here in America to spy on and oversee their people here in America, and who knows who else that they're looking at, you and me.
There has been a lot of conjecture and speculation as to whether or not the president of the United States might be compromised in the manner in which he handles China. What do you say to that? I'm certain you've heard this type of language. What do you say to it, Senator?
Matt, I think it's absolutely a very realistic concern. If you look at the business dealings between his family and, CCP-related entities there in China, these are entities that have direct relationship to the Chinese Communist Party that are paying, millions of dollars to members of the Biden family. Nobody's been able to articulate what value the Biden family members have actually provided, yet the Chinese are willing to pay all these funds. We've actually seen transcripts of exchanges between Hunter Biden saying he's sitting right there next to his father, and that his father is going to impose his wrath upon the Chinese official, the Chinese business person, unless he makes the $5 million payment that was forthcoming after that threat was made by Hunter Biden. I mean, we've all seen the transcripts of that interaction. I think there are very deep concerns about the level of financial relationships between the Biden crime family and the CCP. And if you think about it, this is exactly what all of the background investigations, when I had to have a security clearance, that's exactly what you look for, is any way you might be compromised. And if you might be compromised, you shouldn't serve. We've got, smoking guns right, left, and center here with respect to China, with respect to Russia, with respect to Ukraine, where the Biden family has taken massive amounts. I'm talking millions of dollars. No explanation of what they've delivered for it, and every reason in the world for American citizens to be very concerned about what you just raised, whether there is a compromised situation here.
Senator, I'm curious, and we're speaking with Senator Bill Hagerty this afternoon on the Murphy Show on Super Talk. I'm curious at what point do you begin kind of an awareness of the potential that you might have to adjudicate all of this in the Senate as a juror of sorts, right? Because the talk in the other body in the House of Representatives is now that there is a potential for impeachment proceedings if we continue to gather this information and see whistleblowers come forward with further information about the potential for possibly bribery out of Joe Biden and his family when he was vice president of the United States. And the suggestions now being made, and I think Kevin McCarthy spoke to this, Speaker of the House, just yesterday, that that the House is open to an impeachment proceeding. Obviously, if impeachment happens, then that would come to the Senate for a trial. Have you already kind of begun fact gathering in that arena?
Well, Matt, you know your way around Washington more than any journalist. And if you think about it, McCarthy didn't make that statement just offhand. I mean, that statement's based on a tremendous amount of evidence and information that's coming in. The reason it's coming in is because the Republicans finally took control of the House of Representatives. They actually can issue subpoenas. It wouldn't have come in under Democrat control because the whistleblowers know that the Democrats would never let this see the light of day. All they would do, is subject themselves to the risk of retaliation with no protection whatsoever. Now that we have control of the House of Representatives, we can actually provide that protection to these whistleblowers. They can now come forward and have a venue to bring this to light. And what's happened? One after the other exhibit, and we have seen more and more information, more and more evidence, if you will, of the corruption and the depth of the corruption of the Biden family. And also, and I think this is the most disturbing to everybody here in America, is the lengths at which our Department of Justice, our FBI, and other entities here in the federal government have gone and are going to try to protect the Biden corruption. So we have got, I think, a tremendous responsibility to look into this. The words that the Speaker used was an investigation. That's the next step. It's not an impeachment proceeding, but it's an investigation that will allow more information to be uncovered. That's what he's talking about right now. The way the information is pointing, I think it's taking us right to that. And as you suggest, Matt, we need to be getting ready over here. I haven't seen anything that's exculpatory of the Bidens that have come through this. All I see is a media that won't cover it. And that's not something that the American public's going to buy. I think the average person that's on the radio with us today can see right through this. And the more the information mounts, what we also see on full display as well is a two-tiered system of justice. And the next piece of information that drops on the Biden family leads to the next indictment on Donald Trump. They're trying to change the narrative. They're trying to get the media's attention to flow a different direction. But I think we can see. Yeah, I
was going to say that's well spoken, right? Any negative information regarding the Biden crime family that will immediately lead to more conversation on the part of the mainstream media about Donald Trump, inexplicably, but that seems the way that it happens. By the way, Senator, you know very well that Tennesseans are engaged and locked in, and several of our listening audience wanted me to thank you for saying CCP instead of PRC, because you know very well why they're thanking you for that, because it's more appropriate than some of the mainstream media using the PRC language.
That's completely correct, and it is amazing that they've got the kind of hold that they do over the media here, over our Hollywood entertainment community, over NBA basketball, you name it. They're using every lever they possibly can.
Senator, in the moments that we have left, a couple of issues that I wanted to address with you, and obviously I'm getting to the big bombshell from yesterday, Hunter Biden, the plea deal not being accepted by the judge, thankfully. But real quick, Senator Tuberville, whom I know from my time in Alabama, has been, quote unquote, according to the mainstream media, blockading military promotions. He just wants to go to more of a regular voting cycle, and he's presenting a more important point that the military cannot unilaterally change certain policies that ought to be up to the Congress of the United States of America. Do you support Senator Tuberville and what he's doing?
Absolutely, I do. And Senator Tuberville, I think, was very right to say that the Biden administration using the Department of Defense as a mechanism to impose rules and taxpayer spending that we would have never legislated through Congress. This is about using taxpayer money at the DOD to send people, even in the 9th month of pregnancy, to have a full expense-paid trip to get an abortion. As Tommy Tuberville points out, if your mother died, you couldn't get permission. You're certainly not going to get a full expense-paid trip to go to her funeral, but they're willing to use taxpayer funds for this. Senator Tuberville warned Austin, the Secretary of Defense, that if he were to move this direction, Tommy would no longer agree to expedite the promotion of these generals. And I want to be clear about this. It's Tommy's privilege to not expedite these, to force regular order, as you mentioned, Matt. And Schumer has an ability to deal with this himself. He just won't do it. Schumer loves holding on to the issue. Schumer needs to invoke cloture to begin to pass these through. He could even invoke cloture to pass the Commandant of the Marine Corps through, and he refuses to do it. The mainstream media isn't covering this. But for me to be the ambassador to Japan, cloture had to be invoked on me. We had to stop the Senate for 30 hours to get me through. They've reduced that number now down to 2 hours. He could get 15 generals through in the amount of time that they forced me to wait to go through the Senate confirmation process to become the ambassador to Japan. So Schumer has the tools. You know, Secretary Austin was clearly forewarned, and I think that that Senator Tuberville needs to stick to his guns, and you know, we need to call it what it is. They are abusing and contorting through executive order and through administrative practice. This administration misusing taxpayer funds to do things that American taxpayers, certainly not Tennesseans, would ever condone.
Have you had an opportunity to speak to Senator McConnell? He had a little episode yesterday. It was caught on camera, and it's getting a lot of attention. Have you had a chance to speak to him or his office, or do you know how he's doing?
I certainly have, Matt. I saw him last night right afterwards. I was at lunch with him today. He's just fine. But I've had more media come up with, shove a camera and a mic in my face today asking me about his competence to serve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They'd never asked me this when Joe Biden called.
Well, I said the same, not to interrupt you, Senator, but I said the same at the beginning of the show. It's nice to know because Senator McConnell had just a moment where he had a little pause there. It's nice to know that they're now concerned about the health of our elected officials. They never ask questions about Joe Biden, do they?
No, that's exactly right. But again, I think it just shows we're on a two-tier path here in America. And he seemed just fine. I was just on the floor of the Senate with him just a few minutes ago. He seems absolutely fine.
Finally, Senator, how sure are you, how confident are you that we will get to the truth about how deep the rabbit hole goes regarding Joe Biden, his brother, his son, and their foreign entanglements and potential for illegal activity in his time as vice president and beyond?
Well, I think we're getting further and further every day thanks to the fact that Republicans have control of the House of Representatives. My hope is that we change that dynamic here in the Senate in the next year as we win back control of the United States Senate as well, and hopefully the White House. But what we've seen is a Department of Justice is willing to do whatever it takes to let the statute of limitations run out, to cop some type of plea deal that none of the rest of us would ever give or get, I should say. And, it's going to be up to maybe the only avenue left will be an impeachment because the Department of Justice is not going to bring charges. They're going to obfuscate things, and it's going to take a very deliberate effort on behalf of the Judiciary Committee and the Special Oversight Committee to get at this. But what we do know is that we have whistleblowers that are brave enough to come forward and put their name to it and call out what's happened and what's wrong with this situation. And I hope that we get to the bottom of it because Americans are losing confidence in institutions like the Department of Justice and the FBI that we really do need to hold in much higher esteem. I have such high regard for the FBI agents that I know. I'm certain that the vast majority of people that work at the DOJ are there for all the right reasons, but the leadership here at the top is corrupt, and that's being exposed right now.
Senator, I thank you for being so available to the people that you serve in the state of Tennessee and beyond, and we appreciate you coming on the show with us today, and we'll do it again very soon.
Okay, Matt, all the best. Thank you.
All right, take care. There's Bill Hagerty. He is the junior senator from Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Junior senator from the state of Tennessee, and he joins us for a good 15 minutes today. That'll be podcast if you missed any of that on Super Talk's website, 997WTN.com. Back in a moment. Mark at the Safe House tells me they had a huge shipment of Liberty safes coming in earlier this week. That was on Monday. And then on Wednesday, they had another shipment of Browning safes come in. And plus, they've got incredible rebate deals going on right now at the Safe House. If you've not noticed, prices on just about everything are increasing, but not at the Safe House. He's keeping prices low over there, Mark is. And you can see those savings passed on to you. You need to protect those things that protect you and your family. Now, I talk often about gun safes because, well, we're a gun culture. We believe in our Second Amendment and we believe in our firearms. You need to keep those things that keep your family safe, and you do that with a gun safe, like Liberty, the aforementioned, or Browning, or Fort Knox, or anything else. Plus, if you've got jewelry to protect, or if you're a corporation, you want to get a business safe, they've got those as well. It's the Safe House, a better selection than you will find anywhere else in the world. You heard me. Anywhere else in the world can be found on 4th Avenue South across from City Cemetery. Go to the website and see NashvilleSafehouse.com. That's NashvilleSafehouse.com. Man, oh man, there should be an age restriction on talk show hosts. I don't know that I've reached it yet, but I certainly feel like it today. I'm out of sorts. I went on a toot about age of majority versus age of maturity, and now I'm being told I actually said age of maturity when I'm in age of majority. And then seconds ago, I realized as we were coming back from that advertisement timeout that I'd forgotten to go pee. You know, I told you I needed to, and then I forgot.
Yeah, I had to go out and get you and tell you didn't have time, and then you sat there after you got done with your spot. And I'm like, what is he doing?
I'm walking around this radio show like Joe Biden walks around the White House, for goodness sake. It's embarrassing. Thank you to Senator Bill Hagerty for being on with us. Thank you. I do mean that sincerely.
If your dog bites me, I'm suing.
Joe, mine?
Yeah.
Oh, mine's all good. He doesn't mind tall people. He doesn't like shorties. The old one, although he's mellowed in his old age. Man, oh man, losing his hair, though. Bad.
Really?
Yeah, getting hot spots. You know, my boy John Henry is 12 and a half. He's half Great Dane. That's very old for a Great Dane.
That's extremely old for a Great Dane.
And his back legs are still doing okay, but he like licks hot spots down. We've got the stuff, we got the spray, we got everything. We've got Dinovite, DINOVITE.com. We got all that crap, and it's still, we all got it coming, kid. And
at least the dog's more aware than the president.
Oh yeah, I would trust a John Henry with his big old paws and an ink blot, just put his paw in ink and then stamp yes or no on anything. I would trust him more than I trust the president of the United States or Kamala Harris for that matter. Kamala Harris has doubled down on lies. As the old saying goes, if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough people will believe you. And there's another saying that was noted in a recent New York Post article, and that is lies travel further and will travel longer than the truth. There's another political idiom that is important to note here, too, that if it takes you longer to explain something than it does for the other person to accuse you of something, that you're already in a losing posture. And veracity means nothing. So if Bell K accused Matt Murphy of something and he can do it in 10 words, and I was like, wait a minute, there's a grain of truth to that, but when I start explaining myself, if it takes me longer to explain myself, well, what Kamala Harris has done with this Florida school curriculum involving slavery is disgusting. She's accusing those who were in control of setting the curriculum of racism. However, those that were in control of the curriculum are, many of them, black themselves. What say you, Kamala Harris? Well, no reporter will ask her the question. So, in the arena of political dialogue, lies travel further than the truth, and if you tell a lie enough people will believe you. The Florida Department of Education approved its new curriculum, including specifications surrounding teaching about slavery in public schools. And Kamala Harris has engaged in a strategy by which she knows she's lying. She knows she's doing so for the purpose of slandering Florida Republicans generally and Governor Ron DeSantis specifically. However, she does it anyway because the woman has no core values. I don't really believe anyone within the Biden administration has core values. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a part of the Biden administration. Kamala Harris said earlier in the week, I will not subject you to her voice. Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us, she said, in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it, said Kamala.
I'm speaking.
Oh, sorry.
I'm speaking.
I'm sorry.
Okay?
There she is. One of the academics and the former chairman of the Commission on Civil Rights, Dr. William B. Allen, said a few things regarding Kamala Harris's comments on slavery. But none of you heard what he had to say, did you? Because the mainstream media will not report on it. Because that's not what the Department of Education in the state of Florida did, and Kamala Harris very well knows this. She's referring to one line out of hundreds that gave instruction as to how to surround the teaching of slavery. And the line in question, the curriculum point in question, was to credit slaves for being smart enough and industrious enough to find some benefit out of the evil institution that was created on our soil. It actually says instruction includes how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. Kamala Harris went to Jacksonville earlier this week and doubled down on her claim. She is on purpose misrepresenting this singular line in a list of, I think there's like 200 separate curriculum points on slavery, and she took 1 point out of 200 that was so egregious that William Allen, who is a member of Florida's African American History Standards Work Group and a former chairman of the Commission on Civil Rights, to call her out and denounced her statement as categorically false. As I stated in my response to the vice president, it's categorically false. It was never said that slavery was beneficial to Africans, Allen said in an interview with ABC News. To their credit, at least ABC News interviewed him on this. The purpose of the lie is to obviously encourage racial strife in America. The Biden administration has to engage in identity politics. And they think they've got a pit bull in this regard in Kamala Harris. This is classic political propaganda. And she used curriculum created specifically in Florida to balance the teaching of a very delicate subject to illustrate how effective it can be. If you say something and accuse something, oh, they say that slavery was beneficial, she says, knowing that it wasn't true. And it takes you a while to say, well, wait a minute. That is one piece of curriculum in a lot of curriculum, and it doesn't actually say that. And here was the intent of the piece of curriculum, and here are the people that wrote it. It's amazing how effective this can be for people who want this to be true. She understands that most people that she's talking to will not bother to do the research on their own. And most of the people she's talking to already have the propensity to believe that Republicans are bad, because that has been a major plank of the Democrat playbook for a long, long time. So, of course, why wouldn't she double down on that? Tom is next in Mississippi. Thank you for the call, Tom. How are you?
Pretty good, man. On your hot spots on John Henry, we get a thing out of Walmart. It's a coconut oil in a cream form you're supposed to cook with. We have Great Pyrenees down here, and we put that on their hot spot. It's gone within a week.
So it's just like, it's like a spray?
No, it's a glop. Think of it as liquid butter in room temperature.
Okay.
You take the glob. It's got little pieces of coconut in it. You take like a good bit, and you just rub it on there on all the hot spots. And they sell it in Walmart in the baking aisle.
Okay. All right. But it's coconut oil.
It's coconut oil in a cream form. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I dig it. All right. Well, I'll certainly try it. We have a spray that we're using. It's specifically designed as a hot spot spray that I think it numbs his tongue. He doesn't like it, and so he stops messing with the hot spots and gives them an opportunity to heal. But I appreciate that good advice, Tom. Thank you. Kimberly is on the line to talk about our Vice President of the United States. Hello, Kimberly. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you, Matt?
I'm well.
Nice to talk to you again. The one thing I think they could have added, one sentence after they said how they benefited, was that the skills that they learned benefited them when they were free. If they hadn't had those skills, and I mean, they had a lot of skills, it would, that's what helped them. They became farmers and, it did benefit them. So to say that it didn't is just ignorant. She's ignorant.
Well, and in no way was this an indication. And for her to carve out one line in a line of like 150 different instruction points, she knows what she's doing. It is a fact that some that had to endure the evil of slavery, and you've got to hear that first part, the evil of slavery, those individuals that endured the evils of slavery, post-slavery went on to utilize some of the skills to their own advantage to try to make a life for themselves. That is beyond dispute.
Yeah, there you go. They just keep driving this wedge. She's the worst one. Like, they're just making it worse. We don't want black people to hate us. I make African jewelry for black people, and it's a passion for these people. I do this because that's their heritage. So I'm very, minded about their heritage and how important it is to teach them about their heritage. And the people that make these beads, some of them are very, very old. And, so I love these people. I don't want them to hate me. It's devastating. Every time I hear this crap, it's devastating.
Well,
I was raised by a black man when I was a little girl. I was with him when Martin Luther King died. And, so it's devastating, and they're never going to stop.
Well, don't take it personally, Kimberly, because they certainly don't mean it personally. They don't look at you as a person. They look at you as a subject. That's first and foremost. And thank you for your call. Secondarily, I am reminded regularly, and I make a point to allow myself this awareness. If you think about it, we have hundreds of interactions with other individuals on a day-to-day basis. Maybe some of you have less, maybe some of you have more. But, every day you stop at the gas station and maybe you say hello to the guy at the pump next to you. Or you go into the grocery store and you say, "Excuse me," as you accidentally bump into someone. And they say, "Oh, no, you're fine." Or you interact with someone on one of the aisles that you happen to be on. Or you go to the convenience store. Or you do some other shopping trip or experience. Or you go to the movies to watch, Oppenheimer in 70 millimeter IMAX high definition or whatever it might be. And you interact with the person at the popcorn stand, or you interact with the person sitting next to you. Think about all of those day-to-day interactions. And think about how many times those interactions are with someone that is physically different than you. Whether they're black or white or brown or of a different ethnic background. Think about how often they're of a different religious faith, or even if you can tell. Perhaps they come from a different upbringing, if you can tell. Now think about how many times those interactions are positive versus negative. The positive, unless you're the problem, the positive vastly outweigh the negative. Vastly outweigh the negative. But to hear Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the Democrats talk, it's only negative interaction. They want to create this rift between individuals because that's how they win. They have to create victims. And in order for there to be victims, there have to be oppressors. And you're an oppressor, Kimberly. Sad to say, but you are. I am too. And depending on who's getting oppressed, whatever your background, you could become an oppressor as well. It's 152 on Super Talk. 2 down, 1 to go. Matt Murphy Show, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Super Text line is always up and running. Matt, you're not the only one that's having a Joe Biden kind of day. I was listening to you and drove right past my customer. Also, I wish you would send me your email address so I could send you some recipes. Oh, well. Matt@murpheeshow.com is the easiest one. Matt@murpheeshow.com. There you go. Here comes the news. 1 more hour to go. We are excited about it on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Heat advisory in effect right now for most of Middle Tennessee until 7 p.m. tonight. And then again tomorrow from noon to 7. Could see heat index values all the way up to 107 degrees. Right now, 94 degrees in Nashville. Complete forecast just a few minutes away. The reasons for unraveling of the plea agreement between Hunter Biden and federal prosecutors are made clearer in court documents, as Steve Poitnor lets us know what's going on.
The judge noted that the document spoke of Hunter Biden's business dealings on behalf of foreign entities. When the judge asked whether the agreement covered possible charges for illegal foreign lobbying, and prosecutors said that such charges could still come, Biden lawyers said the plea agreement was null and void.
And now to some news concerning former President Trump. His attorneys held an hour-long meeting with special counsel Jack Smith today as another indictment looms. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville says, don't just blame Mr. Trump for the events of January 6th.
There's a lot of people who should be in trouble, a lot more than what President Trump is for what happened.
Tuberville said that Trump is an American and that he stands by him, quote, 100%. Right now in the volunteer state, Franklin police released body cam footage of a fatal officer-involved shooting that happened this Monday. 37-year-old Stephen Tropia told police while locked inside of his apartment that he, quote, did not care if he lived or died. Soon after that, Tropia was seen walking outside of the apartment holding a pillow and a pistol in the other hand while he was slowly rounding a corner. Officers responded in self-defense, and Tropia later died due to the wound. That officer who fired the shot has been placed on administrative leave while TBI investigates. And another bus full of migrants moved from Texas to California. It's now arrived in L.A. Here's Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Alex Stone gives us the details.
The bus, which left Brownsville, Texas on Wednesday morning and arrived early Thursday, pulling into LA's Union Station with 23 adults and 13 children on board, ranging from 2 to 17 years old, is the sixth bus to arrive in LA with migrants on board, paid for by Texas. California has said it's investigating the buses and what migrants are told to board. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says the migrants want to come to LA because of services that are available to them here.
And the U.S. Department of Justice now opening a civil rights investigation into the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department to determine whether there is a pattern or practice of conduct that violates the Constitution or federal civil rights law. The Tennessean says the U.S. Justice Department announced it this morning as part of the ongoing investigation into the police officer-involved death of Tyree Nichols. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark is with the Justice Department Civil Rights Division.
City and police department leaders recognize the need to scrutinize the police department's practices to prevent such incidents from ever happening again.
And that is the latest news. Weather's coming up next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
All right, here we are. Here we go. It's hour number 3 of the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN 206 to be precise. Thank you for being here. We'll hand off to the drive with Brian Wilson coming up at 3 o'clock today. Until then, your telephone calls, your super text, always welcomed. 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN. We'll have a great first conversation, I'm certain, coming up in just a few moments with Congressman David Kustoff. I hope I'm pronouncing David's name correctly. I don't know that I've ever heard it. David is serving in the 8th Congressional District. This is, if you know Memphis, right? So Memphis is Steve Cohen, the city itself. Everything like west of us and east of Memphis is David Kustoff. He goes border to border and almost gets to Nashville before we get into Green's district and some of the other districts in our local area. So he might be a little bit outside of the listening area, but I want to get to know all of our sitting congressmen. And they reached out to us and wondered if we would be interested in having them on. And obviously, I'm interested in hearing voices that represent the people of the great state of Tennessee. So that's coming up in just a couple of minutes. He's finishing up some votes as we speak.
So as I turned the camera on, you had your hands up to your mouth.
I was blowing into my hands
to warm them up.
I was cold.
Okay, I need people to look outside, realize how hot it was when you went into your place of work or home or office, and Matt just had to blow into his hands to warm up. That's how cold the studio is.
I tell myself on a daily basis, 1, I can always bring a jacket, and I always forget to. 2, do not complain. I remember, God love my grandpa, finest man I've ever known in my life, and the hardest working man as well. I remember the hottest, 2 things. The hottest you've ever been. Do you know? Off the top of your head. I have 2 instances.
Yeah, I do. I got it.
The second hottest that I've ever been, and it was for most of my life the hottest that I've ever been, was underneath a Massey Ferguson tractor with oil and hay all over me, trying to take out the transmission of a tractor that had broken down in the middle of a hayfield just outside of Augusta, Georgia. It was July.
You're working on it with your grandfather?
I'm working on it with my grandpa. And it had seized up and we couldn't get it to move. And it would have cost too much to get a low boy and get it towed back to a shop. So we just dropped the transmission right there, took the transmission and took the transmission back with us. And it was, as my grandfather said that day, this might not be hell, but hell's got to be right around the corner because it is hot. And that's the second hottest I've ever been. I'll tell you the first in a minute. What's the hottest you've been?
On the beach in L.A., when I remember it was 103 out and I didn't have sunscreen on.
Oh, that's probably
so. You can
smart.
imagine the results of that stupidity. Blisters all over my back and shoulders.
You stayed down in it?
I didn't realize how badly I'd been burned until I got back to the hotel.
Yeah, that's typical. That's too bad. Mac Morey, you got a heat story for us? What's the hottest you've ever been in your life? Oh, you're so pampered. Oh, one time
this is a personal definition, not the girlfriend's definition.
I don't know why I wanted. Yeah, not a cougar chow hot. I'm talking.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking just heat hot. Does anything come to mind?
It was at a music festival, actually.
way to reinforce stereotypes. That's good. That's great. I fight for you on a daily basis, Maury. And with 4 or 5 words, you destroy everything that I fight for.
Tearing it down.
Everything that I fight for. No, Mac Morey's more than music festivals. He's more than just cougar chow. Listen to his newscast. He's great at what he does. He is the most talented person that we have on staff at Super Talk. He's young. He's
motivated. He's intelligent. Guys.
Music festivals. Hot.
That listing of Captain Kirk is our guest. And I did not type that in.
Who did?
I don't know. I guess it's been saved that way in the system.
Real quick, before we go to our guest, hottest I've ever been. I made the mistake of agreeing to help my father-in-law repaint his pool. He has a concrete pool.
Ooh.
And you have to use this epoxy, You have to mix this epoxy deal. Well, Bob, my father-in-law, my wife, his wife, and I were going to do the project. Well, Bob twists his ankle several weeks before the project is to be done. You have to do it in the middle of August because you can pick a time where there's no expectation of rain for a few days because this stuff has to cure for like 3 days. At one point, I was having to get out of the base of the pool. We drained the pool. The pool's white. Sun's beating down and baking on that thing. I took a thermometer down. There was 130 degrees at the bottom of the pool with no air, no air conditioning, or no air circulating. And I had to leave every 15 minutes and take a 10-minute break and then go back down and do it again. That was the hottest I've ever been. It's
well,
like
that actually sounds like the minimum smart thing to do is otherwise you're going to have a heat stroke and die.
Well, you not only have the heat, but you also have the paint smells that are getting to you, and no mask in the world would prevent some of those paint smells. So it might be a little bit hot outside, and it might be a little bit cool in here. And all of this was born of the fact that Bell K caught me. If you're watching on TV, I was doing this. I was going to rubbing the old hands
warming
together,
up,
just rubbing it together because it is freezing on the second floor at the dead end of Music Row. All right, so a great opportunity for us to speak to the 8th Congressional District Representative. I've not had a chance to talk with Congressman David Kustoff. I think he's fresh off the floor from several votes, and he joins us on the Murphy Hotline this afternoon. Hope it's not too hot in Washington, D.C., Congressman. How are you, sir?
Well, since I'm Captain Kirk, I tell you to beam me up.
So, is this our guest?
That is our guest, and he is listed in our saved numbers as Captain Kirk. And I don't know why.
Well, there are probably a number of good reasons, but we can guess about that later.
Well, I'll try to give it a go at a later time, Congressman. How are you? It's good to speak with you and good to meet with you via phone.
Yeah, thank you for having me on today. It's it's been a very interesting few days here in Washington, and even though it happened outside of Washington, the court date that Hunter Biden had yesterday in Delaware is a lawyer, and I'm a former federal prosecutor. It was interesting to watch and see that play out and see it unravel, and I take a little bit of satisfaction in that I'm on the House Ways and Means Committee, and earlier this year, our chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith from Missouri, had set up a whistleblower process within the IRS so that IRS employees or agents could report fraud or abuse or misuse, what have you. And, of course, you had these two IRS agents that came forward as a result of this whistleblower process to talk about what they perceived to be the unfair or disparate treatment that Hunter Biden was receiving compared to other people that they might investigate.
Well, I think you're a good person to talk to about this, considering your your history within the court and within courtrooms. I was so appreciative of the judge in this case who recognized that this was a unique set of circumstances that were so highly unusual. She put a pause on this plea deal, particularly considering that the prosecution and the defense did not seem to be able to come together with what exactly they had agreed to. And I think it was all parties in the case trying to have it a little both ways. They wanted to prevent any future charges being brought down on Hunter Biden. They wanted to stop all future inquiry. At the same time, they refused to say that the investigation was closed. And I think the judge properly in the case noted, well, you can't have this both ways. You can't have an open investigation and ask me to provide immunity in the case that we might see other charges come up. What do you say about it, David?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Matt. First of all, if I can rewind the clock 2 or 3 days, because as a result of these two whistleblowers, the IRS agents, the supervisory agent, and the agent that worked underneath him, again blowing the whistle and talking about their investigation of Hunter Biden and how they perceived it should have been, how it should have gone forward, and the fact that they were stymied at different levels from within the Department of Justice. they had to come forward to our committee, the Ways and Means Committee, and they gave what a lot of listeners would know as depositions. They're called something else in the committee, but they essentially gave statements to the Republican lawyers and the Democrat lawyers on the committee. And what we tried to do was to have those statements admitted as part of the court record. And so when we filed on, this happened on Wednesday, so when we filed on Tuesday, 2 days ago, for them to be part of the court record, we did it. It was allowed, and there was somebody who called the court clerk's office in Delaware, and they purported to be working for the staff of the Ways and Means Committee, or the lawyer for the Ways and Means Committee, saying that in fact these documents that had been admitted needed to be taken down or redacted or whatever. They misrepresented themselves to the court personnel. And the judge, when she found out, the district court judge in Delaware, when she found out about this, was furious. And she entered a statement, an order on Tuesday that said that Hunter Biden's lawyers needed to file something by 9 o'clock that night, Tuesday night, or they could be sanctioned. I mean, you don't see a judge that often say, file something by 9 o'clock tonight. And so I think that set the stage, those filings, and it turned out that this person ended up being an employee for Hunter Biden's lawyers, that set the stage for the tone and ultimately what happened in court on Wednesday.
Well, and I don't know that the judge ever got a chance to directly address that component. Now, obviously, there was a lot of other things to address. Have you ever heard anything of anything like that in your time in Washington or in your time in a courtroom where opposing counsel, someone in their office, calls to stop this? I mean, it's a fascinating development that would seem to be, it would show a dramatic hubris or a naivete to how all of this works, to think that they thought they could get away with this.
Well, it's just absolutely wrong. I mean, you don't do that to a judge, and you don't do that to the court clerk personnel. So the fact that she said on Tuesday, you need to respond by 9 o'clock tonight, or I'm gonna sanction you lawyers. That's pretty serious. But I also think, to your question, that she did a really good job analyzing this plea agreement and recognize, and I think everybody who's listening can appreciate this, when the prosecutors and defense attorneys, whether they're in state court in Tennessee or federal court in Tennessee or wherever, come up with a plea agreement, the overwhelming majority of the time, the judge accepts the plea deal. The judge recognizes that both sides have tried to work out what they think is right and fair, and the justice is served. The fact that this judge looked at it, and maybe in part because of these transcripts that were filed, and said, number one, I don't know if it's quite right, and two, I don't know that I've got the authority to issue absolute immunity for crimes that may still being investigated per the statement of the United States Attorney in Delaware. She did the absolute right thing by putting a pause on it and maybe suggesting that she can't accept the deal. And so at this point now, the government and Hunter Biden's lawyers need to see if they can restructure it. I tell you though, from going backwards though, from my standpoint, knowing what I know as a lawyer, knowing what I know that's come before the Ways and Means Committee, what these two agents said is essentially same facts, same circumstances. If we're investigating Matt Murpheeeee or David Kustoff or Joe Smith or Jane Jones, the punishment and the consequences are going to be a lot more severe than if we're investigating Hunter Biden. That should really send chills down everybody's back.
Well, and I believe the immunity piece was designed to prevent any further investigation or conversation about Burisma, Ukraine, Russian side deals, Chinese side deals. We want to shut all of these things down before they get to a criminal court or, in my mind, more importantly, that information gets to you in the House of Representatives, where you will be asked to consider articles of impeachment. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, David, spoke to this yesterday, and I'm curious your thoughts as the 8th Congressional District Representative of Tennessee. Do you believe we've gotten to the point where there needs to be some strong consideration for articles of impeachment against Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think we're awfully close for at least for the impeachment inquiry. And you know, the thing is, he meaning Joe Biden has dodged these questions from reporters. We've seen his press secretary dodge the questions, and you know, whenever President Biden that is asked about it, he says he's proud of his son. He is proud of Hunter Biden, and I'm really concerned. I look at the way that the Department of Justice has handled it, and I don't take any. Let me say this again, as a former United States attorney, I don't take any pleasure in saying that it looks like that there's almost a two-tiered system of justice, depending on who you are or who you know, and it bothers me. I think it certainly bothers my constituents. It should bother everybody who's listening. We want to have faith in our justice system. We want to have faith in the prosecutors and in the investigators. And when we lose that, then we see a breakdown. And in order for everything to be restored, I certainly didn't want to see that plea agreement approved yesterday by the judge, and I'm glad that she didn't.
Do you I should have asked you this before the conversation, David. Do you have a couple of extra minutes? I've got to do a couple of advertisements. I want to keep you on because I want to talk about some of the issues affecting the 8th Congressional District and all of Tennessee and all of America, like southern border security and a lack thereof, fentanyl and human and child smuggling, particularly. Our guest is David Kustoff, a great first conversation with the 8th Congressional District Representative, representing really all areas, non-Memphis areas to our west up until just before you get to Dixon. I mean, you know what the 8th District is. 23 after the hour. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, so you are a singer, or you fashion yourself as a singer, or maybe you know someone that fashions themselves as a singer. There's a lot of singers in Nashville, a lot of singers in Music City, and there's a lot of opportunities for you to get a break. Well, maybe you've not had that chance just yet. I've got an opportunity for you. It is the Strength of America Song Project, brought to you by Stokes Nielsen and the Channel Greatness Organization. Let's talk about this. So Stokes is a songwriter, has been for a long time. It was just an honor to get to know him. He's been around Nashville for some time now, and those inside the industry know him. Well, he wrote a song in honor of the 75th anniversary of the Women's Armed Services Integration Act. And he performed that song at Arlington National Cemetery during the Military Women's Memorial Women's Veterans Recognition Day. And he was inspired to realize that, one, he wants someone to record this song, not him. Two, he knows that there are a lot of great Tennessee artists out there that are just waiting to be discovered. And so here's your chance. You listeners of WTN, call the person that can sing in your household or your family. Or if you're that person, send an email to strengthofamericasong@gmail.com. Strengthofamericasong@gmail.com. Say, Stokes, heard about you on Matt Murpheee's show. I'm your next great talent. Let's hook up and let me record this song. That's all you've got to do. Strengthofamericasong@gmail.com. You could be the next big find in Tennessee and Music City, thanks to Stokes Nielsen and Channel Greatness.
Another indictment looming for former President Trump, the status of Mitch McConnell after a scary moment yesterday. And Bud Light's profit numbers are, well, light. Those stories and more coming up. 2:30, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, McMorty. I have a story involving that tease that I'll share with you after the bottom of the hour as well. I think there has to be a rebranding going on in the future. We'll talk about that coming up in just a couple of minutes. Right now, our conversation with Congressman David Kustoff continues. He's joining us on the Matt Murpheeeee hotline on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Outside of the issues surrounding Joe Biden and the possibility of an impending impeachment proceeding and inquiry, I feel like, I don't want to lead you in any particular way, but the border security crisis is causing so much more in the state of Tennessee and in every state in the union. Is that number one on your radar screen, Congressman, or is there something else that concerns you even more so than the fentanyl and the human and child trafficking that goes along with an open and porous border?
Yeah, well, both. As a matter of fact, as far as the fentanyl is concerned, think about this. We may have law enforcement that's listening. You know, the smallest amount of fentanyl is enough to kill you. And there's enough fentanyl in this nation right now to kill every one of us, every single American citizen, several times over. I mean, it's truly frightening. That fentanyl is coming through the United States, the majority of it through the southern border. There's no dispute about this. Here's a statistic, man, if you will. In this fiscal year, there have been over 22,000 pounds of fentanyl that's been seized at the border by Customs and Border Control. That's great. The question is, we don't know what's gotten in that's gotten past our Border Control officials. I think they do a great job. The fact of the matter is there's not enough of them, and there's not enough of wall. I mean, there's not enough of the wall. You know, it's one thing, we've all seen the images from the border, and you read about it, and I know you talk about it on your show. So I've been to the border under President Trump. I've been to the border under President Biden. It's gotten a lot worse under Biden than it was under Trump. And I want to give you one example, because when I talk about the border wall, I think you've seen these images of these steel beams that go up about 20 feet in the air. You've seen that. That's the wall.
Right.
And you can walk along. And by the way, in portions of it, it's embedded with technology that helps our border control officials. So you can walk along the wall, and the wall will just stop. So it's not an issue of trying to dig underneath the wall or climb over it. You can walk around it. So when I was at the border under Biden, I was in New Mexico, Sumlin, New Mexico, and it's a place where the wall just stops. Now, I'm there, and I'm looking, and next to the wall, there are these steel beams, but instead of being in the ground, up in the air, in the ground, 20 feet high, they're in stacks laying on the ground. So I asked one of the supervisors there, one of the border control supervisors, I said, "Ma'am, what am I looking at?" And her response to me was, "This is the wall, but the order to stop construction was given after President Biden became president." So it's infuriating, because that I voted your money, your taxpayer money, to build the wall, for the materials and for the construction. And it's sitting out there in the desert, not of any use to anybody. So
going fallow, basically, because no one will use it, and eventually it will be determined that those materials can't be used for future construction, sadly. David, I'm sorry to do it, but time constraints precludes me from continuing the conversation, but this is a great opening conversation. Let's continue and continue to inform the people of Middle Tennessee about what you're doing over on the western side, and vice versa. I so appreciate getting to meet you via phone, and let's do it again very soon, okay?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me on today.
There's Congressman David Kustoff of the 8th Congressional District. His office called us up and said, "Hey, we'd love to talk to Middle Tennessee," and I love having him. We'll be back in just a moment. Bottom of the hour news, just a little bit late. It's 2:32 on Super Talk.
32 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock, I'm Matt Murpheeeee with your top stories. Right now, 93 degrees in Music City. Heat advisory in effect until 7 p.m. tonight. We'll have one tomorrow in Middle Tennessee as well from noon to 7. Got a full weather forecast in 2 minutes. Lawyers for former President Trump arrived at special counsel Jack Smith's office for a meeting as a potential indictment looms. The meeting between lawyers for the former president and the special counsel's office is reminiscent of a similar sit-down that occurred in early June, just days before Trump was indicted in the classified documents case. In the target letter he was most recently sent in the January 6th matter, Trump was offered the opportunity to testify before the grand jury, and he declined to appear. The nation's capital, Republican leader Mitch McConnell is back on Capitol Hill today following questions about his health. Ann Flaherty in Washington says McConnell arrived on Capitol Hill this morning around his usual time, warmly greeting reporters.
There's still no word on what might have caused yesterday's episode in which the senator froze up at a press conference and appeared disoriented. Sources tell ABC News the 81-year-old senator suffered a fall 2 weeks ago at a D.C. airport and uses a wheelchair periodically.
And the maker of Bud Light is going to lay off 380 corporate workers, about 2% of its 19,000 U.S. workers, according to an announcement from Anheuser-Busch CEO Brendan Whitworth. There's no mention of the fallout from the partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. In June, Bud Light's 2-decade run as the nation's best-selling beer ended when Modelo overtook it. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Matt Murpheeeee, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murpheeeee for the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project, whose mission is simple: to help veterans and heroes reintegrate from service to civilian life. And every day, we have servicemen and servicewomen coming back and attempting to reintegrate and finding unique and individual challenges in that reintegration process. Whether it's PTSD or some other issue involving physical limitations, mental limitations, or otherwise, the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project is there for every single one of our heroes, our veterans that are coming home. You know, Charlie used to like to say, and I've talked to David Kustoff about this, that the only thing keeping us from evil is God Almighty and the United States military, and we ought to protect our United States military through prayer and through giving. Donate as you can to the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. They have partnered with such great organizations over the years, and it is an honor to be in partnership with them. Go to the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org, the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org, and make a donation today. Hey, friends, Matt Murphy. Every day we hear about another familiar brand selling themselves out to their customers and going woke. Americans are just sick and tired of it, having leftist propaganda jammed into every product that we consume. Woke mobile companies are no different. For years, they've been dumping millions of dollars into liberal causes without telling you or considering that you just have to take it because you need a cell phone and you've got no alternative. Well, I've got news for you now. You do. There's an alternative, and I want you to make the switch today. It's Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, offering dependable nationwide coverage on all three major networks, so you get the same coverage you've become accustomed to in your area, minus the leftist propaganda. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you send a message of what you support, like free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, and the Second Amendment. They are 100% based in the United States of America when it comes to their customer service team. It makes switching so easy. Keep your phone number, and switch. Same great service, no woke propaganda. Free activation with the offer code Murphy. That's MURPHY. Go to patriotmobile.com/Murphy or call 878-PATRIOT and then use the offer code Murphy. That's patriotmobile.com/Murphy or 878-PATRIOT. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I think we've hit on something here. It's 2:40, by the way. Glad to have you with us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. We have 3 hours in our allotment. We'll hand off to The Drive with Brian Wilson coming up in mere moments, 20 minutes or so, and Brian will take you the way the rest of the afternoon. The Tennessee Education Association, T, as it's called, associated with NE, or NAY, the National Educators Association, is suing the state. More on that coming up in just a couple of minutes. I mentioned that suddenly the mainstream media has decided that it wants to talk about age and potentially infirmity. And then there's this from the story that Matt Murpheeeee shared with you moments ago about Bud Light. The parent company of Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, has announced that it will be slashing 2% of its employment roster, or nearly 400 positions, in an attempt to, quote, simplify and reduce layers within its organization. Today, we look at the very difficult but necessary decision to eliminate a number of positions across our corporate organization, said Anheuser-Busch. While we never take these decisions lightly, we want to ensure that our organization continues to be set for future long-term success. Well, I think I have an idea for you, sir. More on that idea in just a moment. I was talking with someone several weeks ago, and this person was affiliated with Bud Light in an advertising capacity. And they said, almost in a hopeful way, all of this, Murphy, is going to blow over. Right now, this person's not in politics. They're not involved in politics at all. They are involved in entertainment and broadcasting. But they indicated to me, they said, Murph, this too shall pass, right? We're not going to have to deal with this for the rest of our lives. I mean, eventually this thing will go away. And I had to tell them that I don't know that that's true. It seems to me that if it were going to go away, it would have started going away. Here's the sad reality for those of you affiliated or associated in any way with Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch. Bud Light does not taste good enough for people to put up with this crap. It is easy and it is cheap. And people became accustomed to ordering it. In April, Bud Light sales dropped 21.4%. The parent brand Budweiser lost 11.5%. Meantime, the major rival Coors Light, the Silver Bullet, experienced a 10.9% boost in sales for the month. So you would think that certain entities in the aftermath of the Dylan Mulvaney debacle would have come to the support of Bud Light. Well, when Bud Light backed off and eliminated their affiliation with Dylan Mulvaney, but they did so far too late, the gay community turned against them as well. And so they started removing Anheuser-Busch products from their bars. The trend continued in June. Bud Light's shares in American retail stores dropped 7.3%. Modelo became the country's most popular beer. I like Modelo. Bud Light purchases slumped 27.9% compared to a year ago in the week ending June 24th. Dave Williams, vice president of Bump Williams Consulting, an alcohol beverage research company, told the New York Post, the 4th of July is the biggest beer holiday in terms of retail sales and an opportunity to move a lot of volume, and there's been no notable sign that the course has changed for Bud Light. One Anheuser-Busch distributor who does not wish to be named said, our year's screwed. I'm getting to the point that I believe that in order to salvage the brand, you have to rebrand it, don't you? I mean, I don't know that there's any salvaging the brand is a different way of saying that. I think in order to salvage any of this, you have to rebrand Bud Light. And I don't know if they're willing to do that. I understand that that's a lot of money. Is that billions of dollars? That might be billions of dollars.
Well, it's not only what you lost, it's what you have to spend to change perception. And I think changing perception is in the billions of dollars.
So if that's already the case, why would you what I'm suggesting is you just dump the brand name Bud Light altogether.
Yeah.
You know what you ought to change the name to? Bud Right. Huh? Not just a hat rack, my friend.
No, they're not going to do that because they prefer Bud Left.
See, I don't think they do.
Well, if they had their way. Can you imagine being the marketing person that got fired over this, trying to get their next job?
Well,
whatever her name was.
Well, yeah, whatever her name was. I don't think the executives at Anheuser-Busch had any idea that this was going on. I know a lot of people want to believe that they were sitting around in their corporate offices trying to figure out a way to piss off 60% of their clientele, 70% of their clientele. I don't believe that for a second. I think they allowed these DEI programs to exist because the DEI programs exist everywhere else, and they gave a certain level of autonomy to some of these programs. And because of that, these people were doing things unbeknownst to management, and when they found out what was going on, it was too late. And no one had sign off on any of it, and anyone who did have sign off on it, they were too scared to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, we're going to tick off our customer base, for fear that they would be labeled as some sort of ist.
Well, you can pretty much guess that the person that replaces her will not have a lot of autonomy to begin with.
I would agree. I mean, and I know there are some that was like, oh, the management at Bud Light had to know. The management at Anheuser-Busch had to know. I don't know that I believe that. Kevin agrees with me. Kevin thinks that Bud Right is pretty good. Nick says we should rename him Tranny Fluid. No, Nick. No. No. Keith says Bud Sucks would be better. Did you misspell suds? No, you didn't. Bud Right sounds too Chinese. I hear you.
Well, that's just flat out racist.
Well, I mean, and then 9037 says if you named it Bud Right, you would be accused of being racist against Asians.
You're a racist.
Matt, if you're what? Oh, that's a hell of a, Rick has a hell of an analogy on the super text line as to make his point that just by renaming the brand, you wouldn't change anything. I'm not here to defend Budweiser or Bud Light or anything else. I think they have well seen the error of their ways. I think their brand was exposed based on what happened as just an easy and cheap way for drinkers to get a buzz. I don't know that anyone really, really likes Bud Light, except that maybe that's their choice amongst a group of beers that really has, I mean, no offense, but very little taste, flavor, or distinction anyway. I don't know, and maybe some of you could. I'm not a beer aficionado, don't claim to be. I haven't been a big beer drinker for years. But I don't know that if you put Miller Lite, Natty Light, PBR, Bud Light, Coors Light in glasses in front of me that I could tell you the difference between one or another one. And I think the customer base decided that if you're willing to flip me the bird in this fashion, it is easy for me to move on down the line on the tap. And, you know, Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Light, Keystone Light, Natty Light, PBR,
Schaefer's,
Yingling, whatever. It's not that big of a difference to me, and your taste is not that distinctive or any better that would lead me back to you. And so now the people have gravitated away from it. They're going to stay away. And Mick, you're right. I would know the PBR because I know PBR pretty well. And PBR is typically, if I order a beer out, that's what I order. I order a PBR tall boy. It's 2:50. We'll wrap things up and hand off to the Drive with Brian Wilson next.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. You often hear me talk about diversification in the investing process, but how do we diversify? Well, we look for things that move in dissimilar fashion historically. Some of those market areas might be really small companies or really large companies, or very growth-oriented companies or value-oriented companies. One of the things that we find is that when we diversify between these various segments, we can reduce the volatility of the portfolio because they don't move in tandem with each other historically. Now, we can do that in U.S. markets, we can do that in international markets, and in emerging markets. And when we can dampen that volatility, we can help get ourselves a little bit of a better outcome as far as knowing what we might likely have in the future, or how we can take income from our investment portfolio. Now, we also want to add fixed income or bonds to the mix as well. Now, if we know that we need to do this, what's the best way to do it? Well, one of the things that we often teach is this concept of market efficiency. This won the Nobel Prize in economics as well. And it's the idea that if I'm investing in, let's say, small value stocks, if we look at professional managers and their ability to say, hey, should I have this stock or that one, and picking companies or areas of the market, we find that they typically get lower returns than the market does on its own. They just add expense and they can add a lot of volatility. One of the things we want to avoid is anything that can hurt your returns and increase your risk in the investing process. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
Another indictment for Trump on the way, an investigation into the Memphis Police Department, and Dolly Parton using her new music videos to promote a worldwide event. I'll explain at 3 o'clock. Super Talk, 99.9 WTN.
You have my attention. You had me at DP. Thank you very much, Matt Murpheeeee. A couple of minutes before we hand off to Brian Wilson and The Drive. Just enough time to remind you to get signed up. If you've not gotten your tickets, I think we have a couple of tickets available to join Dan Mandis, yours truly, Brian Wilson, Pamela Furr, Johnny B, and the brand new Chris Hand at the J Street Korean Grill and Bar. It's happening August 15th, Tuesday, August 15th. We had to move the date. We apologize for doing that to folks who had already signed up. You'll be there, and we've got even more seats available for you. So go to 997WTN.com for more information. Come break bread with us. You'll have a great time. It's an all-you-can-eat deal, and there is a lot of good things to eat out there. There's that going on, and we would appreciate you doing that. Also,
I heard
join
Bell's
me.
going.
Bell K is not going.
No, I will not. I will not be there.
Bell K, I've given up on even doing it.
Just not even, yeah.
I mean, are you going is the big question.
Well, I'm working. I actually do have a real excuse.
I'll save you a seat. You can get out of here. Get out of here at your normal time, which is right at 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Oh, you're out of here at 6:53.
6:35.
6:35. You know what? Whatever time that last newscast is done, and you get up to Hendersonville. You meet up at Hendersonville by 7 o'clock. I'll save you a seat, and I'll make sure that we save you enough food.
Hey, to add on to his tease, that song from Dolly I played yesterday is part of what he's going to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember that song, but I won't say any more about it because I don't want to ruin the tease. No teasing this. An ethics hearing, which began today for a Franklin alderman who's been in the hot seat already this year, ended with the Franklin Ethics Commission deciding that Gabrielle Hansen violated their code by sending a threatening letter to the Nashville International Airport leadership. Gabrielle Hansen, one of my favorite politicians in Middle Tennessee, under the gun again. By the way, join us tomorrow, Bold Patriot Brewing Company, noon until 3. Woo! I'll be out there. Love to see you. Let's fill the joint on Charlotte Pike tomorrow, Elladale Market from noon until 3. Matt Murpheeeee and you at Bold Patriot Brewing Company for a First Amendment Freestyle Friday. Until then, The Drive with Brian Wilson up next. Have a great afternoon.